We're early January here, and we're definitely soundly in the realm of deep winter. It won't go above freezing for at least the next 10-14 days, probably quite a bit longer. No sun, lots of wind, single digits, close to single digits most nights for the next little bit. And my question is, how well is our chicken composting system faring with that level of intensity in winter? I want to explore that in this video. This is our context out here. Here's the little hand-dug pond we talked about in the summer that is pretty solidly frozen on the top, although I'm definitely not going to test walking on it. And the ground is pretty solidly frozen. Where it's bare, the ground is absolutely locked in frozen. Where there's deep mulches, so like in this pile of leaves from the fall, it should be nice and thawed in there, but overall the outdoors is very cold. If we were to dump food scraps or grain or anything like that, it would absolutely freeze before the day is out. The winter run is still functional. There's definitely a couple issues here and there, but what I'd like to do is let our chickens out, I'll open up the flaps first and then let our little hen friends out, our frigid little friends, and get started on the morning's chores in here and take a look at it with you folks. If we don't close the main flap this time of year with the level of cold that we have, we would lose a lot of warmth really easily. I just roll the flaps over, there's just 2 sheets there, and upgraded recently to some more aggressive clips. I was using binder clips, but the wind was knocking it open. 2 on there, and then we should be able to see inside. With this level of cold, they are not rushing out. I'm going to take a moment and a little bit here to put some fresh leaves on this walkway so it's a little bit more comfortable for their feet. For the oldest hens, they'll need that, but they know where to go to get the day started. I've got a nice bucket of seed I'd like to dump for them so that they have something warm to start with. This is some whole seed we soak indoors, so it's about 65 or 70 degrees from being in the house. We could put it near the wood stove to warm it up more, but this gets the day started with good hydration and soaked and even sprouting seeds. I think this soaked for 2 days. It's a mix of wheat and sunflower. Probably would be nice to get some organic corn at some point for extra sugars and fat making for them, but this is an easy way to get some food in their bellies really fast. But the main event is the actual compost in here. Now, for it being so cold outside, the question is, can the composting system survive that? And I've talked about in the past how it does work. There's definitely some questions or some issues in my design this winter that I'd like to talk about really briefly first. And that is this ramp system, which I talked about in a previous video. I'll link to that here. And you can see I'm still keeping them in place, but with this extreme cold, what we find is that any material that remains on the ramps overnight freezes absolutely solid and kind of sticks to the ramp as well. So you can see like this one, that's pretty darn crusty. The really finer ones, so these are metal racks for shelving, they're all seized up, but hens like to go underneath there and hide, so I'm not in a rush to remove them, but they definitely are not functional in a very cold, deep winter situation. They're here, they're fine enough, but we really need to conserve, maximize volume and minimize surface area exposure when it's this cold. I've got my little temperature probe here. Right now it reads around freezing. It was in the garage. It's a little bit, yeah, it's like -5 centigrade, 22 Fahrenheit or so from being in our garage. It's not the outdoor temperature, but I want to see what the inside of this compost pile looks like before I open it up. You see it zipping on by. Pretty miraculous decomposition and how it makes heat. So the outer ring is Fahrenheit. You can see it's approaching 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 35 degrees centigrade or so. It'll probably top off, I'm going to guess at around 100 or 110, which is just about the most perfect temperature I could want for maintaining this compost. I don't want it so hot that it's killing life. This is really ideal for keeping red wigglers and sprouting happening in beautiful ways. It's like a very hot, steamy, tropical day deep down in that pile. The hens know it. They're waiting for me to quit talking about it and get on with it, so let me do that. Stopped right around 100 Fahrenheit. 38 or so centigrade. So with our system here, it's always about taking the compost and moving it through. So behind me to the south is the more beginning of the pipelines where we dump our food scraps, and you can see where I just dumped the seeds. They're working over here. So as I open this up and turn it, I'm going to move it northbound, so each time it's a little bit further along. You know this if you've watched the channel for a while, but this is for new folks. Let me dig in and start opening it up and let the hens get some more fun. Nice rich aroma, nothing too intense. There's enough leaves and sawdust and charcoal added to this that we're not getting strong aromas of ammonia or sulfur. When I smell ammonia or sulfur, I know it needs to be turned more and a ton more carbon added. The charcoal we make in our wood stove helps immensely, and adding lots and lots of leaves that we cached in the fall. So you can see at the beginning of the pipeline here where the seeds of today have been added, you see a lot of leaves. You see some frozen nuggets and stuff over there too. We're trying to thaw them out. They were outside and they need to thaw. But that's the beginning of this flow system. The majority of the material is leaves at this point. Some small amount of charcoal and then food scraps and then seeds. But you can see all the steam. So any of the ladies that are working on here, they're getting sprouts. This white lady's working on some small bugs in the soil and some sprouted seed. This is where it's tricky. When we have our soaked seed, we'll come back over here. So this bucket of soaked seed is really high value. The hens will eat it today if we dumped it out, but the best thing I could do is let them have a bunch just to take the edge off, but then hide it in this hot compost so it has a chance to sprout. Way better nourishment, way more food value if they're eating sprouts, but we need to hide it from them. You can see some strings in here. Those are wheat that hid out for a few days, and the hens are now getting to it now that they're sprouted, and it's about 80 degrees or so coming off of that. Doesn't feel warm in here. It's warmer than outside, but that is a really nice place to get a breakfast. This was all material brought in yesterday that is definitely a lot colder than I was just looking at. Some of it's actually frozen. What I can easily do is accidentally put enough cold material into our warm compost to stall it out and hurt it. So I want to pick through here and get some stuff that's thawed, bulk out our composting flow a little with this more raw ingredients initial stage, and then put the frozen material on top, so that the heat that's getting lost from the compost is coming out anyway, can warm up and thaw out tomorrow's and the next day's compost. If I bury it, it's like putting ice cubes in a stew. You don't want to seize it up. It's a weird analogy, but I'll use it. It's early in the morning and it's cold, so that's what you get. A little bit of crust right on the top, but otherwise pretty nice. And for about 10 or 12 degrees Fahrenheit outside right now, having something like this in here feels extremely exciting. This is nearly zero cost. We buy the leaves were completely free. The red wigglers we've just managed over the years. You can see them in there, I think. I would guess there's about 2 cents worth of investment in this, and this is really nourishing for the hens, and it makes for eggs that are much higher quality for us as well. Now keep digging. So there's some seed that was dumped this morning. With the exposure to the air, those will freeze over not too much time, but buried, they'll turn into beautiful sprouts. So it seems like I'm being mean and hiding food from the hens, but we're trying to balance it where they can get easy access to food right now, but then much higher quality, more satisfying, more nourishing food for themselves a little later. If the whole bucket of sprouted seed froze solid, it would be a bummer for everybody. They'd get a lot less out of it. It'd be cold, unsprouted seed. Of soak seed on top. Maybe work it in a little, but make it very easy. There's a lot of old hens in here, and they don't need to work really hard. They shouldn't have to work really hard to get food in the morning. But 1 or 2 little picks to get a treat. That doesn't seem to work, does it? Basically, all the hens that have come out this morning, this is where they'll hang out for the day. Standing on top of warm compost that has a mixture of soaked seed that's beginning the sprouting process, sprouts, and then tons of red wigglers that are buried all throughout. They go for the easy stuff at first, and I don't blame them. I like a nice bowl of sweet cereal with maple syrup on top in the morning when it's cold, or oatmeal with like nice fatty sweet stuff on top. But throughout the day, it's good for them to do some exercise too. I think it's good for their bodies, and it's good for our composting system. There's a significant amount of heat coming off of this set of piles, and so I'll put the bucket of seed there. As they kick throughout the day, they'll bank more and more compost up against that, keeping it thawed. They can reach in and grab some snacks if they want, but I'm hoping that they leave that alone so I can add some more sprouting seed later on that they can work with a bit later. You can see the hens know exactly where to go. The ones that sit still in here, they're just taking in the radiant warmth from below. It's interesting how unassuming this system is. Like, pretty ragamuffin looking structure. This is the free carport we got from our neighbor way back when with used greenhouse plastic. But the magic of being able to be in that space for our hens and for ourselves to be able to come out and be out of the wind and the rain and the snow in the winter months is really useful. I don't know that somebody would need to build something this size to have this functionality. You could even consider something like little low tunnel EMT hoops with poly that you take off periodically, or the cattle panel high tunnel structure that we've talked about extensively. Something smaller for a smaller flock would be reasonable. But in our cold climate, where for a solid amount of the year, even though each winter gets warmer and warmer and more mellow it feels, there's still going to be these cold snaps where we don't see direct sunlight or above freezing temperatures for weeks on end sometimes. This is inhospitable for the well-being of chickens that come from a jungle context. It just isn't their scene. But if we can repurpose waste materials and have low embodied energy solutions that can mimic to the best of our ability a jungle context through thermophilic decomposition, I think we can have a really nice healthy flock of hens that are really functional, keep our costs low, and generate an immense amount of compost as an exchange for their livelihood, not to mention the quality of the eggs going up and up. It's worth noting as well, I think a lot of folks that watch this channel know this, but this is a very geriatric flock of hens. A lot of these hens are between 3 and 6 years of age. Some of the black ones are 9 or 10 years old. In fact, some of the ones that hide underneath these, they'll pass away this winter, most likely, but we're gonna let them age out at their own pace and then bury them under a tree that we plant in the spring as a thank you for all the eggs that they've offered. But what I'm getting at is this isn't an extremely young, vigorous flock. This is a retirement community, and they're still looking and feeling pretty healthy overall. I think they actually seem like really happy hens, and having the system in the winter that can generate compost and fertility and feed them in a really gentle way feels valuable, and it feels respectful to their needs. Anyway, it's cold enough. I'd like to go back in and be by the fire. I wish the hens could have that too, but they can't. But that's our system in a cold snap. Fair bit of labor, but very low embodied energy, and with a lot of additional yields of healthier, happier hens and ample compost that we can harvest in the spring. And as long as we insulate the compost as it finishes, so probably on the further end here, we'll start putting sheets of plastic over this with dried leaves on top to insulate the quieter, more mellow compost that could freeze without any intervention. We'll be able to harvest compost to fill air prune boxes in the spring and do our seed starting and transplanting soon enough. It's not that big a deal to do a thing like this. It's a fair bit of work, but what isn't in farming? Let me know what kind of questions you have or concerns, or if you think this is something that would be compelling for you, but you're not sure where to begin. Offer up some questions or some roadblocks that you're seeing in your system, and maybe the community can help think this through with you and get you up and running. It might be a little hard in the middle of a cold winter to establish something like this and get the warmth happening, but I bet it's possible, especially if you're a little bit more mild than we are. Happy winter to you wherever you are, and hopefully you and your animal friends are all thriving in it. And Happy New Year to everybody.